Amaya was no stranger to challenges. As the eldest of 4 siblings, she carried the weight of responsibility with quiet grace. Every morning, she rose before dawn to prepare breakfast and get her younger siblings ready for school. Her mother, a nurse working long shifts, relied on Amaya to keep the household running. Between school, volunteering at the local food bank, and tutoring neighborhood kids, Amaya's days were full. Yet, in the quiet moments of the evening, she buried herself in textbooks, dreaming of a future where she could become a doctor and lift her family out of poverty. But dreams required money, and in their tight-knit community, resources were scarce. The cracked sidewalks and peeling paint on houses spoke of struggle, yet the spirit of camaraderie remained strong. Amaya, with her warmth and determination, was a beacon of hope for those around her. One fateful evening, as Amaya studied at her desk, a faint, acrid scent wafted through her open window. At first, she dismissed it as a neighbor burning leaves, but as the smell thickened, she glanced outside and froze. The night sky was ablaze with an ominous orange glow. Mr. Johnson's house was on fire. Mr. Johnson, her elderly neighbor, was a quiet man with a love for gardening. He often shared words of wisdom with Amaya, offering advice about life and education. Her heart pounded as she realized he might still be inside. Grabbing her phone with trembling fingers, she dialed 911. The operator assured her that help was on the way, but Amaya couldn't just stand by. With her mother at work and her siblings asleep, she knew the risks of leaving the house, yet the thought of Mr. Johnson trapped inside outweighed her fear. Without hesitation, she bolted out the door, sprinting toward the inferno. The heat was searing as she reached the house, where a growing crowd of neighbors stood frozen in fear. Amaya hesitated for only a second before pushing the front door open. Smoke billowed out, stinging her eyes and filling her lungs. She dropped to her knees, crawling beneath the thickest smoke. "Mr. Johnson," she called, her voice hoarse. A faint cough answered from the kitchen. Moving quickly through the familiar layout, she found him huddled in the corner, his face pale and his eyes glassy from the smoke. "Amaya," he rasped. "Yes, it's me. We need to get out," she urged, helping him to his feet. He leaned heavily on her as they struggled toward the door. Just as Amaya's strength began to falter, a section of the ceiling collapsed behind them, the roar of the flames growing louder. With one final push, they stumbled out into the cool night air. The gathered crowd erupted in cheers as firefighters rushed past them. Amaya and Mr. Johnson collapsed onto the lawn, gasping for breath. Paramedics quickly tended to Mr. Johnson, who nodded weakly toward Amaya, gratitude shining in his eyes. "You saved my life," he whispered before being loaded into an ambulance. The next morning, Amaya awoke to find her street buzzing with activity. News of her bravery had spread, and neighbors stopped by to thank her, offering small tokens of appreciation. Though touched by their kindness, Amaya felt uncomfortable with the attention. She had simply done what needed to be done. Later that afternoon, a knock at the door startled her. When she opened it, Mr. Johnson stood there, looking healthier than expected. Beside him were 2 sharply dressed men holding briefcases. Her mother appeared behind her, concern etched on her face. "Mr. Johnson, are you okay?" Amaya asked. "I'm more than okay, thanks to you," he said with a warm smile. "May we come in?" Once seated in their modest living room, Mr. Johnson leaned forward, his expression serious yet kind. "Amaya, I owe you my life. What you did wasn't just brave, it was extraordinary. I've been thinking a lot about how I can repay you." "You don't have to repay me," Amaya said quickly. "I'm just glad you're safe." Mr. Johnson chuckled softly. "That's exactly why I want to help you. You risked your life for mine without hesitation. I need you to know something about me. Before I retired, I ran a successful business. When I sold it, I made more money than I could ever spend in a lifetime." Amaya's eyes widened. Mr. Johnson had always seemed so unassuming. She never would have guessed he was wealthy. "I've decided to use some of that wealth to help you achieve your dreams," he continued. "These gentlemen are my lawyers. We've set up a trust fund that will cover your college tuition, living expenses, and anything else you need to become a doctor." Amaya's mouth fell open. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Mr. Johnson said gently. "Just promise me you'll use this opportunity to make the world a better place." Tears streamed down Amaya's face as she nodded. Her mother, sitting beside her, wiped her own tears and pulled Amaya into a tight embrace. "This is a blessing, Amaya," her mother whispered. "Don't let pride get in the way." In the weeks that followed, Amaya's life transformed. The trust fund allowed her to focus on her studies without financial worries. Invitations to speak at community events poured in, where she inspired others with her story of courage and determination. Despite the newfound attention, she remained humble, continuing to volunteer at the food bank